Yeah. Are we in? Is everybody seeing us? Okay. Hope so. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first of our webinars. Today, we're going to be dealing with tips and tricks when it comes to cutting SEF heat transfer films. Today, we have Holger Back from SEF Textiles from France or from Germany. He'll be actually helping us with some details regarding these products. So the aim of the webinar is essentially to help you improve your knowledge when it comes to cutting and weeding SEF films. And for the main reason for that is to make sure that you can save time, save money, and improve your outputs, essentially getting yourself a bit more money at the end of the day, which is great. So if you know how to use the product properly and you can cut everything correctly, this will save you so much more time and stress at the end of the day. So let's not linger too long. Holger, if you don't mind, continue with your presentation, please, and then we can show everybody exactly what they can do to improve the cutting of your product. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, South Africa. Welcome in the SEF Corona studios. I heard you got some spare time where we can just a little bit talk about what is the issue in cutting and weeding, and everybody would say, hey, guy, I've been weeding through all my lifetime. I know very well. What do you want to talk about? The thing is, you normally, even when you work for 20 years or 10 years, as long as you're working, you always have to do your job. You hardly have any time to think about why is this working and why this is not working. Whereas my job is always to find out why people cannot work with some material. So in the meantime, I got some knowledge on that. And I would just want to share this knowledge with you. Let's go into the presentation I prepared for you. Here we are. And let's go there. Cutting and weeding. What is actually what makes things tricky when it comes to the cutting? First is when you have thick films. And the second point is when you have thin and elastic flex films. First of all, the problem with thick films is really that the blade is caught in the material and cannot turn, and therefore you got a pointed blade with a larger relief angle that it makes the area where it's blocked smaller, so it can keep on turning where it should. Short point on the angle of a knife. There are two different angles. There is the relief angle is from the horizontal to the blade, but some blades they say they name not the relief angle but the edge angle, which is from the backside to the blade. So it's exactly the inverse. So if someone asks you for a pointed blade and he says, yes, I'm using a 60 degrees knife, in terms of relief angle, it's the pointed blade, whereas in terms of edge angle, it's not. So pay attention on that. Mostly, I think it was Mimaki who gives the edge angle instead of the relief angle, whereas all the rest mostly gives the relief angle. A short excursion as well to the question, what is offset? Offset is in fact the distance in between the turning point where the blade is really turning and the point where the blade is really cutting. Because the cutting plotter always thinks he's at the turning point, whereas when the offset is set too big, it turns too late. So you got round edges on the outside, whereas the offset is too small, it turns too fast, so you get round edges in the inside. And only when the offset is set perfect, then you have a real edge. The offset, really, as it's described here, depends 99% really on the blade. So once set up your new blade, you set up the offset on your cutting plotter, and then you're done. Mostly, except in some rare cases when you have real thick material, you can think about slightly to adjust the offset, but in general, it's not necessary. So coming to flock. Flock is 500 microns, so it's a very thick material, but so you have this issue with a standard 45 degrees blade that it's caught in the material and cannot turn. So the standard solution is a 60 degrees knife, which is not the very best solution, as you're trying to cut a hot melt which is swimming on the flock fibers, and you try to go through like this. If your blade is not really, really sharp, then you get in trouble. Whereas, it's really a thick material? No, it's not, because you don't need to cut the flock fibers. You only have to cut the hot melt and the flock adhesive on top of the flock. So if you set up your blade, the depth of the blade, properly, that it can only cut what it needs to be cut, then you're perfectly done with a 45 degree knife. So you don't even always have to change the blade. If you try cutting flock and afterwards cutting flex again, you can use just the 45 degrees knife, and that's it. Then we come to the thin and elastic flex films. What makes it different? Actually, nothing. The more flexible it is, the lower the relief angle should be. Imagine a tomato. When you just try to cut like this, then you will fail. But if you really cut, it cannot escape. Otherwise, it will escape. And also here, the depth of the blade is very, 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 very important. But be honest, what is your first reaction if something doesn't cut properly? Most people tend to get the knife out and to raise the pressure, but in fact, it's not the correct way. You should always set up your blade that it can only cut what needs to be cut. This helps you that the lifetime of your blade holder is longer, because imagine here you got a ball bearing, and if your blade is always very, very much out, you cut with a lot of pressure, the ball bearing is very much stressed. And then you should cut in this direction, you should come in this direction. Instead of going in this direction, it just slightly jumps, and then it jumps, and you got those tiny uncutted lines. Let's come here again. I'm not sure whether you can see that. I can try to make you see that. I tried it, but come on, I've got to go here. Otherwise, I don't see what I show you. Can you? No, you can't really see, but it's tricky. Always when something comes with the weeded part, if a letter comes with the weeded part, it's verdammt. You saw that? Then it's because of the because in the edges are really uncutted lines, and this makes the letter falling off. And people tend to say, "Hey, this damned flex film is not working," but in fact, it's the blade holder which is not in proper conditions. If it always comes up that you have trouble weeding. Come on, I've got to go to. Then think about replacing the blade holder, because blade holder is not that much money, whereas you save a lot of time. If weeding goes properly, if you cut it properly, the weeding is much easier and much faster. So think about that. What does it? People tend to. I can show you really what is the flex film in general. The flex film in general is really 60 to 80 micron something. This is hardly anything. It's just you cannot really feel there's a blade. You just slightly feel there's something, but not. You don't think of a blade. If your blade is always like this, no, you don't get it sharp. I mean, you see it on the slideshow. Another point is when you're cutting always with too much pressure and your blade is too much out, the cutting strip, you get lines in the cutting strip. And if your blade should just slightly cut besides the line and it tends to always fall back into the line, you end up again with those tiny uncutted lines. The letter falls off, the flex film is guilty, but in fact it's again your machinery is not in the best way, in the best shape. And that is what I said before. Think of replacing the blade holder. If you don't, in first case, it already can help if you put a drop of oil inside the blade holder. The knife can turn easily, but don't has too much play. But thin thing is for thin and elastic films, the cutting speed. Again, be honest. If something doesn't cut, what do you do normally? You slow down the cutting plotter, which is good on glitter, on reflective, but on thin and elastic film, it's not the best way. Again, imagine the tomato. If you're trying to cut a tomato with a not very sharp knife and you do it very, very slow, it doesn't work at all. If you speed up, it will work. It's the same when you're drilling metal, you're drilling slowly as it's rigid, whereas you're drilling wood, you drill much faster. And it's the same. Rather think of cutting at high speed or at minimum 2/3 of the maximum speed of your cutting plotter to be able to cut elastic material. Another point is this overcut. If he needs normally to cut this, he goes further the edge and starts before, just to prevent those tiny uncutted lines. And again, if you keep on having trouble reading your material, also think of eventually buying a new cutting plotter. It will save you a lot of time weeding, especially when you're talking about small, very, very, very small details. And if you, just to show you how it should look like, if you're not able to weed like this, then you should think of changing something. This should be always possible. coming back to the other one, let's have a summary on that. What is really important? Thick films need a pointed blade with a larger relief angle. That is clear. But it's more glitter or reflective eventually. Flock is not a thick film in terms of cutting. You can cut with a standard 45 degrees knife. Always set the depth of your knife properly, that it can only cut what really needs to be cut. If you can see the cutting line too much, again, very hard to see, but you can see the cutting line in the backing. If you see it more than that, if you can feel really where the knife was cutting in the polyester, then you cut far too deep. Really, it should only slightly touch the polyester backing. Use as much pressure as necessary, but the less as possible. So the best is really to set up your cutting plotter. You start with high pressure, and then you slightly adjust the depth of the knife. And once it really touches only slightly the polyester, you reduce the pressure as much as you can. When it stops cutting, you raise again two points, and then your setting is perfect. Offset depends on the knife. Just set it once and then you're done. If you always have uncutted lines, oil your blade holder or replace it. If you still have trouble weeding small details, invest in a new cutting plotter which has now the word is missing. There's overcut. Damn it. Overcut is possible. Okay, I hope this helped a little bit for you. You were able to learn something. And I would go over if you be ready to answer your questions, if you have some. Nobody has a question. Whelan, do you have a question?
I see Marie's typing something, so there you go.
But next tips. I think what we try to do. What we try to do is to make it compact and short, not to bore you too much. I could talk hours and hours and hours about details and everything, but this time we want to focus on really the cutting and weeding. And next time we're going over to the transfer condition to see what possibilities you have and what do you have to think about. Thank you very much. Das wollte ich ja gar nicht. But in fact, when you think about how to peel, the more you peel in directions being backwards, really, instead of being upwards, then you tend to pick up also the letters. If you're trying to peel really in a 180 degrees angle, like really like this, instead of like this, then you're much better then. You were able to see now? Sorry. Really. Let's go. Come here on the table. Come with me. Please follow. So, this guy's camera. I'm in now? No, still not. Here we are. If you really weed backward here, now we have it. Now you can see, I guess. This is the better than instead of weeding in this direction. Setting pressure, yeah, okay. I can do that. There we go. Here again. I think those was better. I go over here, otherwise I'm not sure whether you see. Really. You get your blade in the blade holder. Just you can hardly feel anything. Better feel nothing. Then you get into your cutting plotter. And then you really set up pressure to, for this graphic here, it's really high, where you really know this pressure is not needed. So like 24. Then you make your test cut, and then you see the no cutting line. You slightly get the knife a little bit deeper. You really now, okay, now it's cut. When you see the inner part, the inner part comes. The inner part of the test cut came off again, so it's still not slightly not enough. The polyester is nearly untouched, so again a little bit deeper. Another test. And then it comes off again. Still comes off, but the polyester is really tough now. And now you can see this is a good example. Now the depth of the knife is set properly, but we go over to reduce the force now. Reduce the force to, I know that this one is working with, on my Graphtec plotter here with 12 kind of something. So now this is not enough. This didn't cut at all. That's good. Then we slightly go up. No, still not. And here we go. And now you can see with the lower, with the knife, with the blade settings set properly, with high pressure, the inner came always off because it was the polyester. It cut it that much into the polyester that the blade moved a little bit. Lowered the pressure again to the what is really needed. Then the inner part stays, and you got now the perfect settings for this lovely fantasy flex. Thank you. And yeah, for the brother scan, I would But it depends on the settings. If your material is really registered to the brothers properly to the brother machine, then you can trust on the automatic settings. If it's not, and I guess our FlexCut, it's not in the original settings, you rather go to adjust the pressure manually. You're welcome, Pete. It was a pleasure. I hope you got it, or you got the idea. Oh, welcome. Oh, we even get the 30 minutes. That's great.
Okay, it looks like everybody's asked their questions. If there are any other questions, they're welcome to email us or drop us an email, and we can always then follow up with those questions via email if you want, or a Zoom session if necessary. And to answer Letitia's question, we haven't set one up, or we haven't set a date yet, but that will be discussed after this, and then we'll put something together. But I suspect we'll probably do it sort of early next week, just to give us enough time to prepare for it. But we'll do it on a regular basis, maybe a weekly basis. I think that might be a good idea. If everyone's got any more questions, please drop us an email. Thanks, Letitia. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, thank you for everybody for joining us today. It's been very insightful. Thanks, Holger. And then we'll send out emailers and Facebook messages for the next one, so keep an eye out for that. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care, guys, down there in South Africa. Bye.